Mouth breather. My goal since I started this series of videos has been to find something better to talk about than the quote-unquote culture war, which I spend far too much of my time as a YouTube viewer getting sucked into the various controversies surrounding the culture clash between feminists and anti-feminists and men's rights advocates, women's rights advocates, all sorts of insanity that sort of spreads out from that and springboards beyond that. And I am finally throwing in the towel and admitting that it's something that is too much a part of my online existence to completely avoid talking about it. I'm not planning to compete with Sargon of Akkad or any similarly famous voices in the community, but I don't want to put that kind of energy into it. I am troubled enough by thinking about these things without getting into the constant arguments on the internet any more than is unavoidable. But I'm constantly getting suckered into arguments on forums and the like, and wasting too much of my time and energy. But sometimes I just cannot stay silent. I have things that I have to say. And what I wanted to say today was to bring up the subject of why exactly we use the term social justice warrior as a negative when we're talking about this, and amusingly enough, it was a cartoon that got me to think about this. But anyway, so the point of why social justice warrior is not necessarily an insult, but definitely a negative connotation. It sounds good on the surface. I'm sure it does. It's a label that many people self-proclaimed with 10 or so years ago when the internet first started to become enough a part of day-to-day life, thanks to the popularization of smartphones. Before that, there were people who did the kind of SJW thing, but there was not the volume, there was not the immediate accessibility for literally any idiot who wants to insert him or herself into the conversation. See this idiot right here for an example. But anyway, the point is, why do we say it as so the people who initially said it thought it was a good thing, and those who disagree with them will point it out as a negative. And I actually, among other reasons that I'm constantly getting chased off of various discussion forums, there was one place where I specifically used the term SJW to refer to people who disagreed with my worldview, or I disagree with their worldview, and they were bringing politics into some place where, in my opinion, it had no place being. And because I said, hey, let's not have this politics shit here, I became the bad guy in that community, and I ended up being thrown off of the board because the guy who ran the board was a self-proclaimed SJW, and he didn't like being called that. It's okay for him to say it, but it's not okay for anybody else to call him what he calls himself. So, I could go off on a whole subject of how, in my opinion, it should not be possible for the person who owns an internet discussion forum. The laws that we have are all screwed up, and it should not be allowable for the person who pays the bills to keep the server running to treat the board as his property. In my estimation, it should be seen as a public space, and it's analogous to the sidewalk outside of a restaurant or something that you run. You may own the property, you may own the block of land that your building sits upon, but that sidewalk is there for public use. And similarly, a discussion forum, in my opinion, is for public use. Anyway, so I said I didn't want to get into that, but I guess I've just covered that whole topic. So anyway, that's a little bonus philosophy of mine. But the one that I wanted to talk about now is the old saying, if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail to you. That's a proverb that I've encountered in various forms, starting oddly with a card game, and have seen it crop up here and there over the years, and at this point it's very clearly a truism that a number of people live by, and I agree with it. I think that when you appoint yourself a duty, if your job is to, let's say that you're a cybersecurity expert. Your job is to catch hackers. You're trying to protect people's personal information by locating anyone who might gain unauthorized access. Because that is what you do for a living, or even if you're not getting paid for it, if it's what you do on a day-to-day basis, you're going to be out looking for them. You're going to be trying to identify people who seem like they might be hackers. You're going to actually accuse them of being hackers and watch them under suspicion of being hackers, and because you are patterning your existence around this energy, because you are looking for this thing, you're more apt to find this thing whether or not it actually exists. So that's the point that I have when I use SJW as a negative. If you appoint yourself a social justice warrior, and you think that you're going to go out and crusade against the evil social injustice of the world, if you have tied up your identity in that idea, then you are going out looking for excuses to classify something as an injustice. On top of that, the whole thing is based in slacktivism. The whole thing is people, there were a few people doing this kind of thing as their job, and that brought with it a certain level of professionalism. But now that any idiot can just hop on the internet and post a hashtag and call things out and get a flash mob started, it's turned into this really dangerous environment where, going back to the proverb, if all you have is a nail, these are people. If all you have is a hammer, these people don't actually have a hammer. They have an index card with the word hammer written on it, and they're just going around brandishing this index card and saying, "I am the wielder of the hammer. You look like a nail," and run up and try to give people a paper cut with their index card, completely oblivious to the fact that they have no authorization or not the necessary power to actually do a good job. Many people have quoted the concept of power corrupts, but I firmly believe that is not true. I think that if you have the power to enact your will, then you are more likely to be able to accomplish something in a competent way. Whereas if you are a basically powerless person and you feel compelled to flail around and try to make a difference even though you don't have the ability to do it, I think the latter is much worse. I think that there are a lot of people who, I am of the opinion that the lack of power is what corrupts, that people who are helpless and desperate and flailing about cause a lot more harm than good, even when their intentions are noble. Whereas if you have a lot of power, it can be difficult to gain power without being corrupted by the process of gaining it. But if you have the power, in most cases I think that it just enables you to be more of whatever you are, whether you're good or evil, would be, rooted in where you came from before you got all this power. And once you have all this power, you're gonna use it in whatever way you have decided is appropriate. So if you weren't a corrupt person before, gaining power is unlikely to corrupt you. It has been known to happen. There certainly are anecdotal examples to point to, but I mentioned before I don't really believe in statistics, so I don't want to see facts and figures proving whether it's true or false. But my assessment based on the sort of broad picture that I can look at and come up with is that more often than not, I think it works out. I think that people who have the ability to actually accomplish something are probably more likely to try and do what they think is right, and the more powerful they are, or the more knowledgeable they are, the more competent they are, they will be able to do a better job of actually figuring out what that is. So, you know, that's the concept that I'm getting at here is don't appoint yourself a social justice warrior, because that's going to lead to you trying to be a warrior, which is not really a good thing to be. If that's your mission, you're going to be going out picking fights where they don't need to happen. And if your goal is justice, social or otherwise, then you're going to be looking for injustices and finding them where they're not actually there. So if you want to make a difference in the world, there are real problems that you can be working on. But if you just want to sit around and complain about what you think is wrong with the world, I understand. I certainly do plenty of that. It's very tempting. It feels very satisfying to be like, oh, I took a moral stance, even though you didn't actually accomplish anything. So I get the temptation, but it's I've been doing it for a long time, and it does not lead you good places. So find a better use for your energy.